We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred.
With Maxwell Silverhammer.
We are nothing sacred. With cruise control. We are nothing sacred.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go again.
Welcome to Nothing Sacred. I'm
Nothing
Maxwell
Sacred.
Silverhammer.
Yeah, he's Maxwell Silver. I am Cruise Control.
And with us, we have Brett Shavers, who used to do undercover work with the police department and also worked with the sex crimes unit. So, Brett, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
First of all, as we always do, Brett, like I said, welcome to the show. And thank you very much for your service. I'm not sure if you're still, we'll get more information about what you're doing now. But obviously you were a part of law enforcement, so we appreciate your service to your community, because we, as people, we respect law enforcement for what they do.
We back the blue big time.
There we go.
Yeah, perfect.
But well, tell us, give us a little rundown on your police career real quick. Just kind of a little what you kind of did.
Well, I worked at the Renton Police Department, which is like a suburb of Seattle. It's just button up against it. And I did a few years in patrol with just basic patrol, handling dog complaints and that sort of thing. And I did a couple of years, about 5 years in SWAT, and use of force instructor, did bike patrol. I was a field training officer. And I did about almost 10 years in undercover work. And that was with my department. We had a 2-person narc team, I guess. We did narcotics, vice, gambling. And then I went to a state task force. And then I went to a federal task force where I did some more, I guess, bigger cases and had more interesting stories from that time.
So and now are you currently retired, or are you currently doing other things, or what are you up to now?
You know, my last years in the police work, I started a computer forensic lab, looking at like a CSI for computers, I guess. And I started at my department, and I was doing that kind of on a part-time basis, and had some things that happened during that work that I really wanted to do that full time. So I left law enforcement at about 15 years and went into the private sector for cyber forensics, digital forensics. So That's what I've been doing since then.
So you've run the gamut. You've done basic patrol work, like you said, for worrying about people's dogs, to go into
the SWAT team
undercover
calls.
work, SWAT team, use of force, then sex crimes, and then computers. So you've pretty much handled a wide variety of different things over the years. So that's pretty interesting.
Let's my toes in a lot of things.
Well, let's talk about the undercover bit a little bit, because we interviewed Jay Dobbins, who wrote No Angel, My Harrowing Journey into the Hell's Angels. And what he said is he started to take on his character that he was supposed to be. Did you find that when you did undercover work?
No, I didn't. But I've seen it, and I can see how that can happen. But I had a strong family life, wife and kids. Kids at the time, kids are gone now. And my wife really kept me in line, and I could turn it on and off much easier than I've seen others do it. So I can't see that happening, but I think it depends on the type of undercover work you're doing as well. So I think, and that what you're talking about, that case there was a long-term undercover case.
Right.
So when you're living that role, I can see that happening. Where mine was, I had a lot of short-term, like one-day ops, several weeks ops. I had a couple long-term, 6 months to probably a year ops. But since I was bouncing around so much and not living one particular undercover life, I don't think I had the risk of that as much as other people have.
Well, and I'm sure in terms of different undercover work you're doing, it's also the lifestyle that you're trying to portray and you're trying to go with. I mean, when you're dealing with people that are, like you said, Hell's Angels and other things, you're dealing with things you might have to do sometimes that might, not be the same thing as going as like a businessman or someone who's more, or whatever. I don't know specifics. Like, I don't know how specific you can get into and what kind of roles you took on.
That's the next question. Yeah, I was wondering about that too. Like, what kind of undercover type stuff?
Well, I've bought probably every kind of drug, meth, coke and crack and heroin, and I bought a lot, and I've sold a lot. I've sold the same kind of drugs, but in bigger quantities, of course. I portrayed myself as a drug dealer, a drug addict. I bought and sold firearms, fully automatic weapons for arms trafficking. I bought people, in human trafficking.
Oh shit!
I've traded 2 RVs for several kilos of cocaine in one deal. So I was a kind of a vehicle trafficker, I guess, of cocaine.
Wow.
So a lot of those things. And a broker, I guess, was a lot where putting criminals together with other criminals and being the middleman that ends up arresting both sides. So I've done a lot of those types of things.
That must be really, really interesting, or at least morally sometimes, to go through with that, because what you're doing is for a greater cause overall, but still you're doing things that you're, like you said, like trafficking people and other things like that, or getting, illegal guns and, whatever, the drugs. So is it hard to kind of come to terms with that? I mean, sometimes, I guess maybe that's why some people get into that whole, like we were talking about earlier, changing their persona. But how did you deal with that in terms of knowing you were doing things that immediately were not right, but if for a greater good, or was it that bounce? Were you able to see that perspective, I guess?
Well, I guess probably the biggest key is all of those things I just said. None of those were crimes because they weren't fully committed. So, for example, I sold like 20 kilos of coke at one point to one guy, and I got the money. I gave him the bricks, and a minute later he's arrested. So
okay.
Although I did sell that cocaine, he was arrested. So it didn't go further than that. When I bought and sold people, it was, it ends on that spot, especially with people.
Okay, that's good.
I was wondering about that too. Were these kids that you were buying?
I bought some kids and sold some adults. So that's
oh shit.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. Wow.
That's just insane. So that's another thing that we should really, people don't understand how common that is here. Like it's much more common than I assume people realize human trafficking in the States.
Yes. Yeah. It's not good.
No, we can get into more of that stuff as well. Just like different stuff going on with that, because people don't want to talk about it, obviously. It's a tough thing to talk about, but are there the situations where that does happen, where it's long-term, or is it usually just once they get nabbed, they're done and you don't have to worry about like having to keep up appearances like for a longer period of time? Because I think that's what the problem with the Hells Angels was. He had to keep up he had to do things and continue to do things.
Right, to build a case kind of thing. As opposed to this, it sounds like, your buddies were waiting, and as soon as you did the sale or whatever, then bam, freeze, police, get on the ground, that whole little bit, right?
Yeah, the cases are all different. If you're looking like a long-term case, like for example, let's say the case you're mentioning there is, let's say it's a year or two long in depth. Let's say there was a homicide in there, right? I mean, he's a witness to a homicide, and they're going to go kill somebody else. That's pretty much going to be the end of the case. It's they're going to wrap something up right there.
Yeah,
because you can't let people get killed. And I've had it with cases doing drug cases where, in one particular drug dealer offered me some young girls, and that changed the course of that case. Where we were planning to do a long-term case, but as soon as we got the kids and probable cause, to end that trafficking, that kind of ended that drug case and turned it into a human trafficking case. So it depends on the case, on what the how much can you do to make it go longer, to wall off some things you can let go, like small crimes, and maybe you make an arrest on the side later in another town, and you don't tie it to that main case. But sometimes something bad happens, you kind of got to take care of it right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You got to go, well, no, we're not, there's a line we're not crossing here, we're not going to cross that line.
That's man, that's insane. Well, you talked one time on John Wiley's show, Law Enforcement Today, about a situation where you almost got caught. What happened there when you were doing undercover?
Geez, I can't remember which one that was. There's been several times. I guess as an example, I was patted down for a wire and weapons at one point. And it was kind of a spontaneous thing where they just grabbed me and started patting me down. But it was such a sloppy job of patting me down that they missed my wire and my gun. And I thought, wow, I didn't have to do anything, say anything. They're so sloppy, they missed it. And now they really trusted me. So it was a good meeting for that.
So it worked out. But for a minute, you're going, oh, man, I don't know. This might be the end, right?
yeah, a lot of things went through my mind of how to get out of it. And it wasn't how to shoot my way out of it. It was more shooting your way out of anything doesn't really help too much. If you can talk your way out of it, it's better.
Well, in those situations, when you're dealing with a large amount of drugs or people or whatever, if they catch you, what's the likelihood that you're going to be in a good position anyways?
Right. You're pretty much
it seems like if the stakes are high, are that high, they wouldn't mind. Or do they usually, when they find out they're a cop, it's like they just like how the
it depends on the person, really.
Yeah.
I was more afraid doing the street level meth buy, buying a teener of meth or a little bit of crack. I was more nervous doing those deals than I did some outlaw motorcycle gangs as well, and I did some Chinese mafia triads, that sort of stuff. Doing those deals and talking to those people, I had less fear at the time than I did on the street corner, meeting some guy who's, up on meth. So
yeah.
It all depends. Not that one is less dangerous than the other. It's just that.
I like how when you're telling this, you're like, yeah, and I dealt with some Chinese mafia guys. It was very casual talk. You think most people would be like, and I dealt with some Chinese mafia.
Yeah.
There's a little emphasis on it, so it's just funny.
I think a lot of that is because we're so used to the movies exaggerating shit.
Yeah,
that we don't think that it's real, but it's actually real. There are really Chinese triad mafias in Seattle and whatever in any area, like probably especially on the West Coast, I would assume.
You never know. I think ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Because when you don't know, life is good. But if you were to truly peek behind the scenes, between the slats of wood to see a sliver of what's going on next door or down the street or in your own office, people would be kind of shocked. So I say it nonchalantly that, whatever, this outlaw motorcycle gang or whatever, but truly it's everywhere. It's everywhere. You could think it is that criminals operating. They're right in front of you. You just don't see it.
Yeah. Especially with this, like going back to the child trafficking. Obviously with all the Epstein stuff going on, it's exaggerated, sensationalized, but I don't think people realize that in even smaller towns, there's probably somebody out there who's nabbing kids and,
Well, there was a situation. I take a door-to-door bus service for the disabled, and we pulled up to pick up a passenger. It's a shared ride system, and this young teenage girl got on the bus behind this passenger, and he thought that the driver thought it was her PCA. Turns out it was some girl running from some guy that was pimping her. Yeah. So it was pretty freaky. I'm like, oh shit, that was a real situation. So, and he couldn't do anything as the driver. He just told her, I'm sorry, ma'am, you cannot be on this bus. So, but yeah, so you're right. It's around you all the time. You just don't know what to look for.
Yeah. If people knew what to look for, it would probably cut out half of what's going on, but we're oblivious. And I believe there's free training that people can take on how to recognize human trafficking or victims and that sort of thing. And if we were all more aware of it, I think we would come across those things and find them and save some kids or save somebody who would have been lost otherwise.
In your estimation, how bad is it compared to like the ignorance? Is that pretty much the most crazy thing going on that people really aren't talking about, or is there
even crazier stuff? Yeah.
It's I think it's the severity. That's the difference. You have, there's a lot of drug problems in society, right? You have a lot of homeless problems in society.
Yeah.
But when you have children as victims, we're talking sex abuse, and all the rest and worse. The severity of that is really extreme. So it's hard to say which is how much of it there is, but there's more than one's enough. But there's obviously more than what people are realizing. And it happens. Just the other day in a town near where I live, there was a woman who was promised a job in a massage parlor, and she was confined there and somehow escaped, called for help. And, search warrant was served, and the owner, the pimp, in effect, was arrested for promoting prostitution. So those things are happening down the street.
Yeah.
And if you don't recognize it or see it, they just keep on happening. And when kids are involved, it's just the severity is much worse.
And it could be a very simple, like you said, it's probably just a girl moving to a new town, you know, and some guy says, hey, you need a job, you know, and so she's going, oh, this is great. This fell in my lap. And then it turns out to be this, you know, guy who's keeping her against her will and making her perform sexual acts and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. The actual business is disgusting. I'm not talking about just sex being disgusting, but the business of trafficking humans for sex is disgusting. And because we don't know, I mean, citizens don't know, but I just give an example in Seattle area. Let's say there's a couple of houses in a neighborhood, and I'm giving you like a case, a real case, right? Let's say there's these houses in Seattle, and in these houses, they're in the neighborhood, and cars come and go, and there are 1 to 5 women imprisoned in that house. Some are locked in the rooms, and they eat and sort of subsist on McDonald's or Burger King food that the manager of that house feeds them. And after a while, those 1 to 5 women are moved to another state, and they're exchanged for another 1 to 5 women.
Yeah,
just they're cycled, just, you know, kind of the circuit, but they're all kind of imprisoned and trapped, you know, with threats to their family, held onto their passport, that sort of thing. And the Johns, I guess, you know, in Seattle for say, they think they're getting all these 5 new girls in this house, and that just continues. That's how they're marketing women and young girls of these are new, but they've been abused for years in another state, and that's happening everywhere. I mean, it's happening everywhere.
So they're being passed from pimp to pimp, pretty much.
Is this more? Yeah, I have to go. I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Is this more along the lines, of course, because that's another thing people think it's all, you know, illegal immigrants or just people that are coming to the country, you know, who don't have their passport or might not know, but is there a lot of it going on with just American kids being snatched, or is it more? I'm sure that's probably one of the reasons why it might not seem as crazy as it is.
I don't know if anyone could ever get an actual number. I mean, you always know how many are saved, you know, or saved or found, but to quantify that is kind of difficult, I think. You know, I mean.
Wow. Well, and then you got into like we're talking about sex crimes and things, you know, so obviously you got into that too, like the computer crimes where you guys have a decoy online that does the
well, I did a little bit of that and a little bit of the diving into computers. So they're actually kind of 2 different worlds there. We talk about the online, you know, pretending to be
right, where you pretend to be a 14-year-old girl or whatever, and really it's you sitting back there typing with this guy, and he's saying he wants to do all kinds of sexual stuff to you, and you guys arrange the meetup.
Yep, I was involved with some of those cases, and there's ICAC, to Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. I've done some of those, but most of what I did, especially on the law enforcement side, was looking at the actual computers and the smartphones. So after, let's say, someone's been arrested, just dig into their device and find who else they've been chatting with, any other victims, their email contacts, who they're sharing these illicit images with, and the IP addresses of these emails that they got from these emails, where they're downloading it from. So I did a lot of that forensic work of doing that. So that's a little bit more technical than, you know, pretending to be, you know, a 10-year-old girl or 10-year-old boy online, but they kind of merge together in the overall case of, you know, this is how we found the guy, and this is how we proved, you know, electronically.
Because if they're going to do it once, they're most likely have done it before or have other options available to do it with, you know.
Pretty much. Yeah.
It seems like that's kind of the way it is. Because if you have the balls to try to lure a child to do sex, you're not going to just have it do it once.
It's not a one-time thing.
Well, you know, I'm going to dabble in this one-time thing, you know, where I decide, you know, I figured I'd try it out once, you know, so.
Put my toe in the pool of pedophilia or something.
Yeah. Like if they're willing to go that route, you know.
They're different people for sure. And probably the most memorable experience I had with a pedophile was a long interview over several days. And speaking friendly, you know, to get a good conversation going. And I mean, eventually confessed to everything and on, but just listening to that mentality and what they think is right and what should be right and things that they've done, it's enough you'll throw up after a while. If I would start eating lunch with them, you know, bring in lunch, and then it got to the point I couldn't even eat with them just because it just
was that vile, huh?
That vile, but, you know, pretending to be interested and conversating with that kind of person to get evidence. But it's just
amazing how a person like that could not realize what they're doing is just fucking wrong. It's just wrong. Like, no. I don't know how political you want to get in, but it seems like the line is thinning even more now, with minor attracted persons and that kind of just nonsense.
Well, luckily the laws are fairly strict. There's ages, and there's even more so with abuse of authority. I mean, there's a lot of, at least the laws, if the laws are enforced the way that they are, that at least does some justice, to keep people off the street. But what people believe should be allowed and what the law says are kind of two different things. That's thankfully we're not at that bad point yet.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We're getting, like, there's a lot of things going on. I don't want to get too political. Like I said, I'm not sure where you lean on that in terms of grooming and that kind of thing. And just like the laws, like about teaching younger children about sex and stuff like that, like, which is just a blur.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
No,
that's not the reading, writing, arithmetic kind of education. That's
right.
That's beyond. Well, it blurs the lines, because if you're willing to talk to a child about, they need to know and understand this kind of thing when they're 6 or 7. That all that seems to me is to introduce sexuality to children. It just doesn't. It doesn't lead to good things. I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah,
it's too early, man. You can't be talking to kids about those kind of things. But
it's innocent. It allows them to learn, and then they can know. It's like, no, I don't think that's how it works. And it's just like the blurred lines. Like, there are some people out there right now who believe that as long as they call them, I call pedophiles, whatever, but like, because that is a new term, minor attracted person is what they're trying to change. Minor, it doesn't sound, it's just minor. If they don't act on it,
of course they're going to act on it.
But if they just look at some pictures, they're not really acting on it. And that's bullshit right there, because that's exploiting of children regardless of
who took those pictures at some point.
Yeah, like but there's like a line that's bleeding. Have you seen that happening over the years in your experience? Or
I see it. I don't like it either.
Yeah.
But I see it. I think if you look at who pushes it, it's not the average parent who's pushing it. It's not the average parent. Like, I'm not going to come out and say, yeah, you can talk to my 5-year-old, boy or girl about sex. I'm not going to be that parent that's going to say that. But you're not seeing parents talk that way. You're seeing the people who actually support committing those crimes talk about it. So I think as long as it stays in that realm of pedophiles, or they sound like pedophiles, as long as they're talking about it, we should all not agree with it.
Well, the problem is it becomes part of the curriculum. Oh yeah, we're going to talk to kids about sex. This is part of the lesson plan. And you're going, what? At 6 years old, huh?
If parents took more care in their kids' schooling. I went to my kids' schools several times a week, just to volunteer as a parent in the classroom, just to see. Not that I suspected anything was going on. I just want to make sure that kids are learning and
what they're learning.
What they're learning, and they're no one's being bullied and that sort of thing. And I would be there just for, a short time, 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the class, and then leave. So just teacher knows parents are involved. Parents are involved with their kids' work, schoolwork, knows what's going on, and you can prevent probably 99% of everything happening.
Yeah. Although there are these people now that are saying that parents don't even need to have consent anymore to teach this. You don't have to tell your parents about teaching this.
Well, like you said, I guess these are pedophiles that are coming up with this kind of stuff, huh?
Yep. Well, it's the parents. Yeah, it's the parents' ultimate responsibility. I mean, that's where it falls down to. So whatever happens because of the parent. And it's unfortunate that if you have to work 2 or 3 jobs and both parents have to work, and it's just a tough life with recession and jobs and all those sort of things, it's rough. But the parents, that's the last protection the kids, any kid have is, and kids without parents is even more difficult. So you just can't quit. You can't rely on somebody else to do it. You have to do it yourself.
And it comes from so many different angles too, because if you don't stop it in schools, like like a lot of parents will give their kids cell phones when they're like 10 or 12, which I think is a terrible idea.
Oh yeah.
Smartphones, at least maybe have those kid phones that have you can just have
give them a flip phone or something
like that. because it must be, it's pretty incredible how avenues for exploiting children has opened up with over the last 20 years with the internet. So
well, the internet gives unfettered access of the world to the child. I mean, unfettered.
Mm-hmm.
So where a pedophile in the past would, the old campground, or not, I'm sorry, the playground, the van,
with the candy
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, practically that's true. The pedophiles got to go to where the kids are, and they have to groom. Much more difficult to groom a kid in the playground, especially if parents there and other kids there and that sort of thing. They can only groom one kid at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But with the internet, one pedophile can groom dozens of kids at the same time. So, and not only dozens at the same time, 24/7 at the same time, and dozens of kids through the internet and different games and chats and those sort of things. So the exponential growth of harm to kids with the internet is just incredible when you give them access to the internet, because then the whole world is at their door.
Yeah. Yep. You're giving your kid access to your kid, basically everyone.
Yep. Yes, wow. You are.
Yeah.
Go ahead, man.
No, you got it.
Oh, well, I have a burning question. This is the one kind of going back to the undercover type thing online, where you're, posing as a decoy or whatever. I like watching a lot of these YouTube channels where they think they're talking to a 12-year-old girl or whatever. And it's really this organization that, catches these guys, and they arrange a meeting, and then they show up and they confront them. And sometimes cops are called. Well, there's a variety of reactions from the police, and some are, hey, you guys are doing great work and we really love what you're doing. Do more of this. And then there's other police that are like, well, you should be calling us. This is dangerous. You shouldn't do it. So is there a general stance on that kind of thing, or how do they look at that in law enforcement?
I think it's individual and agency focused. I guess it depends on what the individual and agency believes or feels. On one hand, if the police officers are telling citizens, don't do that, but call 911, and then when they call 911 and nothing happens, that gives a mixed signal, basically. Well, call us and we're not going to do anything, but we don't want you to do anything either. But on the other hand, if you're encouraging citizens to do these type of investigations and someone gets hurt, there's always that liability of, well, I was told by officer so-and-so to keep on going and keep doing this, and I got shot. So it's a liability effect, but it's also I wouldn't say incompetence, but lazy. There is laziness in law enforcement where things don't happen when they should, and citizens, they see that and they want to take care of it themselves, right? Because they'll do it. Because if the police aren't going to do it, they'll do it. But it's a liability on the agency if they're supporting it, and it's also personal liability on the person doing it. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if I was still a police officer and someone comes up to me with evidence, here is probable cause to arrest or investigate a crime, I'll take it. I mean, it's
right.
I'm not going to turn it down. It's like, well, I got it dropped in my lap. I got some evidence. It looks like it's righteous. I'll follow up on it, verify it, corroborate it, and run with it. So I would never tell someone don't do, crime fighting, I guess, in effect. But because if a regular citizen can see a crime, but they're told by the police don't do anything, then we're going to have a bunch of witnesses or non-witnesses who say, well, I'm not going to do anything, not going to see anything. Police will take care of it. And the police won't unless they're there. I mean,
right.
911 is a cleanup crew.
I know that a lot of times they're told, don't call 911, but go submit this to the detective, all your evidence, all the chat logs and the stuff that was said and the video when they confront the guy or whatever. So it's kind of a mixed bag. It's just interesting. I was just wondering what you all thought of it as far as law enforcement, but it sounds like it's, like you said, it's just mixed all over depending on the agency and the person.
About agency and person, even if you were to go to a city the size of LA or San Francisco or Seattle or anywhere, and to go to that agency with some evidence, this chat logs, whatever you have, depending on who you talk to, that case may or may not get worked. It may get to the bottom of the drawer, or they may jump on that right away. So again, it's not just agency, but it's person specific. You don't know if you're going to get Barney Fife or Arnold Schwarzenegger as coming to your door to help you with your crime.
Well, it's also kind of a line to draw, even going to confront the people. Like, it's almost like, because it's obviously a little bit of it, you know, as I'm sure Max will admit, it's a lot of it's the YouTube sensationalism. We're going to go to this guy's house.
Oh yeah,
confront him at his house. You know, but it almost seems like you either do that or you take your chances on going before to an agency and giving the information that you have, like these are chat logs. Because I don't know how much a confronting the person would, you know, it seems like that could muck things up a little bit, right?
So when a police officer confronts anybody, whether it be a jaywalker or just a citizen, just a consensual contact or a felony arrest, whenever a police officer confronts somebody, every single contact is armed. There's a gun in that contact because the officer is armed.
Yeah.
So every contact is armed contact. An unarmed person can take the gun from the cop and kill him or her. So for a confrontation with a police officer, every officer should be thinking, I might have to shoot this person, or this person might shoot me. That's every single contact. I take that to the point of out of law enforcement work, that any confrontation that I do, whether someone confronts me for some reason, whether it be road rage or whatever, every contact that I have a confrontation of that, I'm still expecting I might get shot or I might have to shoot this person.
Yeah.
So when you have people who are actively investigating crimes and then actively confronting, we're talking criminals that could be facing 20 years in prison. Yep. That is a tough personal decision to make on how much confrontation, how far are you willing to go should something happen. I mean, it's one thing, knock on the door and then a gun is drawn or a knife is drawn or a fist is thrown. I mean, all those things can happen at any time. And it's one of those, well, I could have prevented it by not doing it and just did it a different way, you know, called the local detective or whatever, and have them do the confrontation. But any confrontation is a potential of getting hurt or killed, or hurting or killing somebody. I mean, that's just the way confrontations are.
I think they do it to expose the person, you know, to their job, to their family, to whoever. And, you know, I have seen one particular guy I like watching who I've actually got to interview. You know, he always has the little code that he tells his camera guy. He'll say, "Oh man, I'm hungry. I want some fried pickles." And that means call police. Yeah. So the guy will step out and call the police. You know, like they've had a guy the other day who was just tweaking balls and he was saying the craziest stuff, you know, like kind of like what you said with the guy you didn't want to eat lunch with anymore because he was so disgusting. So, you know, and so yeah, they called the cops on him for sure.
Well, there's the other part is I understand getting hits on YouTube, that sort of thing, with because it's entertaining, number one, and we want to know who these people are. I mean, it's one thing to know that they're out there, but it's another thing. So I see that face, that's a bad guy, that's a criminal. That's, you know, it draws attention to see that, and we want to know that. But there are sometimes even police make mistakes. There was a case in Washington State, maybe 10, 15 years ago, and they arrested the wrong person for illicit images, right?
Oh wow!
And the person they arrested was a fire department lieutenant, and he claimed innocence, right? And he was totally innocent. It was just a bad investigation. They arrested the wrong person, but his life was practically ruined. I mean, you can imagine the devastation of being the news before. He was never convicted, but before going to trial, he's in the news. He's got a family. I think he got fired. I mean, just went downhill because of this bad casework. So, and these are professionals, right?
Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. These are people with the resources to look into this thoroughly in ways that people like the YouTubers can't. So when you've got people that might get something wrong or have it, they don't know if it's, you know, if that person's life could be completely ruined in the same way, except the difference is that there's less accountability for the people that screwed up.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, well, there's always a liability for defamation of character, and I mean, just to me, for me, it's personally too much of a risk. But then again, if the police aren't doing anything, and those crimes are happening there, it's what can you say? Right?
It's just like any kind of vigilante justice, I guess, is that you're basically drawing a line of where you're going to step over or not, and it's not going to be a clean line all the time. So. It's an interesting subject because, like I said, there's a lot more power in people like on the YouTube to be able to do that than there was 20 years ago. It's like a new thing. So,
and the good thing it does prevent, I think, when it's well known, you know, pedophiles talk to pedophiles, and they know, I don't want to be on YouTube, with these. So it might prevent some as well. So
maybe like a deterrent kind of thing.
Right,
well,
maybe.
I know they share. I know there's like networks of these guys that actually share child porn and all kinds of other stuff. I guess that's a big thing too, huh?
Oh yeah,
they share it, and it's a big money business. It's buying and selling online is a big financial business. So you have people who have a financial stake in it, whether they agree with it or not. They do it because of money, and people buy and sell it. And there's of course sharing. There's more I'd say free, but there's more accessible images, illicit images online, especially the dark web, than anyone could ever imagine. It's just
it's just weird how somebody would peg someone and go, hey, you want these pictures of this little, obviously.
Well, here's a screwed up mindset of people these days, though, Max, is that they'll go, well, some people might even go, well, at least I'm allowing them to see this so that instead of touching a kid, they're just looking at a picture.
Well, yeah. Brett was just saying that earlier, actually.
Like there are people that have that mentality, and so they will like they'll think they're actually doing them a good thing, like instead of them, you know what I'm saying? Like it's pretty sick, actually.
Yeah.
I call those red flags.
Yeah.
So, totally.
It's a red flag.
Yeah, because that kind of means that it almost like, red flag is in that person is secretly like, hey, I'm the person getting out those pictures themselves are obviously part of it too. So
totally.
Yeah, it's scary, but I think people are waking up a little bit, at least the school stuff going on, or at least that kind of grooming.
I hope so, man. Hope so. But so what's this? You say computer forensics now that you do. What is that?
Well, let's give an example. Give you a simple example of, let's say you have a company. We'll call the software company A, and one employee from software company A leaves that company and starts his own software company B. And let's say software company A, all their clients go to software company B. Well, there'd be a lawsuit. A would say, hey, I think B stole my client list, or stole my intellectual property, or stole whatever. Mm-hmm. And then a lawsuit comes, and then I'll look at everyone's computers. And then I'll say, oh yeah, on this date and time, a week before he quit, he copied, 1 gigabyte of data, and he copied these client lists, and he copied these software programs. And I can prove, pretty much prove or show, these were copied this date and time, and now they're on his other computer at his new company, and they were accessed this date and time. So that kind of helps the case, to show what happened. Other things would be like internal corporate matters. You have a supervisor who's sending illicit text messages to an employee. Well, to make sure he gets fired correctly, go through his smartphone, go through everything, and say, yep, he's been sending these pictures and statements to his subordinate. So yes, those sort of things for forensics, for that. Stolen intellectual property is a big one, and there's a lot of harassment, I guess, with computer devices where people are harassing, and so that's kind of the forensic work that I do now.
So bullying, sexual harassment, stuff like that, mainly is what you would deal. And is it a company you work with, or is it? How does that?
Well, I did work for a company after law enforcement, and did some fairly major cases with some big names that made the news, at least for the casework, and a lot of government work where you had government type of cases. And now I'm just a consultant on my own, so I consult with law firms and businesses, and kind of help with guiding what they're going through if they're in a lawsuit, whether they're suing somebody or getting sued. There's things you can do as a company if you're getting sued. Obviously, you don't want to give all your data to whoever's suing you, because you have a lot of private information, business information. You can go bankrupt if you give the wrong data. So it's protecting data on one end, and it's also on the other end trying to get the data that's responsive for a lawsuit to prove or disprove whatever the facts are. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you guys ever go after any of these like scammers, like the internet scammers or telephone scammers or anything? Where, we went through and proved that they stole this or this person's identity.
I don't do that. I have done a few social media type of things where civil cases, and they weren't scammers, but they were kind of harassing through social media, creating a bunch of fake accounts and trying to sabotage a company. So I did a lot of that backtracking to trace who was actually posting all these comments and who was actually doing these things, and tracing IP addresses to one person actually who were trying to sabotage a former company. But as far as the scammers go, I mean, I know there's YouTubers who do that, finding the scammers, and I'm like, awesome. I would donate money. The more people do that, because the robocalls and all those things. But no, as far as a consultant, there's not much money in that, because there's no client really is going to pay, hey, can you get rid of the scammer for me?
Right.
Just because it's just not,
But there's a lot of shit that you can do online now, as we were saying, as the technology gets crazier. But it's funny how these people think they can get away with it when there's a trail, a digital trail, pretty much leading back to the source.
Everything they've done. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't think, is it true that pretty much everything you do online is just there forever? Like no matter what you do, like it seems like, yeah.
Practically, you can think of it that being true. Yes. If you put it up on Twitter and delete it, someone probably screenshotted it. It's going to be on Twitter servers. Same with Facebook and your phone company and those things. But practically everything is going to be on there. But there are ways, obviously, you can hide yourself online and never be found unless you screw up somewhere, somewhere else. But
right, man, that's pretty. You've written some books too. Talk about those a little bit.
I've written some computer forensic books, basically how to do forensics. One is called Placing the Suspect Behind the Keyboard. And that goes over how to do what we just talked about, how to trace somebody using different means: physical surveillance, electronic surveillance, wiretaps, IP address tracing, email, all those things. So I've written that kind of book and some software type of books. And I have a new book coming out next year on, it's not totally a forensic book. It's kind of like a Tom Clancy meets digital forensics type of book.
Oh, it's a fiction kind of thing, huh?
It's a historical, I guess, kind of fiction. It's on a country that has imprisoned some political prisoners and activists, hacked into some journalists' computers, planted evidence, assassinations, government corruption, overthrown the government. It's not the U.S. It's another country. It's all factual.
Not yet.
Yeah. So I'm writing that book with one of the guys who actually did that case. His name is Mark Spencer. And that should be out next year. So that's going to be not a technical read. It's going to be a read of, oh my God, how could a nation do this to journalists and activists and lie about it and on and on and on, and people dying in prison. So that's what that book is being written right now. So that's going to be something you could read without having to worry about technical.
Right. Going jargon and stuff going, what the hell is he talking about?
Right. So
are those on Amazon, or do you have websites or anything else you want to give us information about?
They're on Amazon. Just search my name, Brett Shavers, and I think I'm the only one on Amazon writing books under Brett Shavers. So it should pop up there.
Cool.
Oh, wow. Well, man, this has been fun. It's been informative for sure. And is there a website or anything if anybody wants to contact you for any reason that they can?
Oh, sure. I got a personal website, brettshavers.com. So that's
perfect.
Probably the easiest way to find me is when I worked for a long time trying not to be found, now I'm making myself easy to find, I guess.
So yeah, you don't give out your Facebooks and your social medias and all that stuff. It's mainly just your website, I guess. Brett Shavers.
Well, I got a Twitter too, so yeah.
Well, I guess being a writer, you do need those things. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a necessary evil nowadays, right?
Yes, it is.
Yep. All right. Well, this has been a pleasure. Once again, thank you very much for your service to your community.
Appreciate it.
And continue to your service to getting people who do bad shit. Take care of them, So
the cyber bullies, the sexual harassment, all that crazy stuff.
Absolutely.
So wow. Well, Brett, thanks for coming on the show, man. And just hang on with us for a second. Yeah. We're going to wrap this one up. I'm Maxwell Silverhammer.
And I'm Cruise Control. And this has been the Nothing Sacred interview. And that's the story there. Bitches.
See ya.
We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred with Maxwell Silverhammer. We are nothing sacred with cruise control. We are nothing sacred.